Some people might know I'm from East London.
Right.
Some people might not know that you're from East London. You were born in East London.
East London, Forest Gate.
Forest Gate, which is just down the road from me.
Yeah. I was, Forest Gate Hospital.
Forest Gate Hospital. I don't even know if it exists anymore. I think it might be Newham General.
All right.
But that's interesting because, I mean, I guess I don't even know when I first checked you out. I remember I kind of found you and you were kind of setting up your stream one day. And it was really odd because a lot of people were DJing. You were just there with, I don't know, glitter and moons. And I think you were probably doing a special event. And I said hi, because I say hi to a lot of people the first time. That's how I met, I don't know, I just done random. Hi.
Right.
And then years later, I found myself on a call with you. But the whole thing was, I think it was like, I can't believe you're from Forest Gate. And I was like, well, I'm not quite from Forest Gate, I'm from Leicester. But we bonded over Forest Gate, which is so bizarre.
Yeah.
So you kind of you grew up in Forest Gate, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Forest Gate. I came to America, actually Connecticut, which is a neighboring state to New York City.
Yeah, it's where little Miss Disco lives.
State, yeah, and I came as a teenager. So mom and dad, sorted it out, and I was already almost done with high school in London, and then so when I came here, because we start high school at 12 in England, and they don't start till 14. So I basically went back to high school when I came to America.
Okay.
A few years, and went off to college, and then college is really where I started DJing actually.
And this was in America, right? This was in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Okay. So why did you end up in America? Was it your parents' decision, or
yeah, it was their
decision. It like a Will Smith moment where they basically sent you off over to America?
Well, they actually came with me, unfortunately. No. Actually, it's funny. My mom, in her younger years, used to be a model, and she used to do. She used to travel. She came to America to model and Paris and all of that stuff. She was in the circuit, and at that time, she wanted to come and live in New York, and and around that time, she got pregnant with me. My dad was like, nah, and came back. So probably in the mid 1970s, my grandmom went to Florida on a cruise, and it went down Florida and the Caribbean and all that stuff. And she comes back and tells everybody she's moving to America because she has a friend there that can get her a job, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So in 3 months, she told Granddad, sell the house, meet me over there. So Granddad, everything, ended up over. And then my mom said, well, you know what? Here's another chance for me to go back to America. And so my mom and dad left me and my sisters with my aunt. And they were gone for about 2 years, actually, working and stuff, And my dad hated Florida. Said it was too hot. It's like just baking. And
alligators.
Yeah.
And some quite nice record warehouses, though. Someone's told me.
Yes, for sure. And so my we had a family friend who had moved to Stamford, Connecticut, previously, probably a few years earlier. And my dad did the 24-hour drive from Florida to Connecticut. It's a 24-hour drive.
Yeah.
And he said, I like this up here. And that's how we ended up in Stamford, Connecticut. And,
Okay.
And Stamford is more like, it's more like how we lived in East London, you know, but bigger,
Yeah.
you know, it's a suburban town, but with a city feel, you know, and, you know, you have the downtown and everything else. And, you know, but you have to have a car, and yet everywhere you have to go, you have to get in a car. You can't just go to the, you know, you can't go to the off license on the corner.
No,
you know?
no.
You know, you have to get in a car, you know. So that's how we ended up in Stamford, and then my aunt, my mom's sister, she moved over as well years later. Funny enough, my dad's sister, my dad has 8 sisters, and 3 of those sisters had moved to Brooklyn in the mid 70s,
Right.
and so they were the ones who got us sponsored through immigration. So that's, you know, made everything. You know, back in the day when it was, you know, you just filled out the paper and then like they stamped your thing and you got your green card and you're gone, you know.
Yeah, when Pretty Patel didn't exist, right?
You know, and so you know, that's ultimately how we ended up here, and you know, and it's been, I've now lived in America longer than I've lived in London at this point, you know, but London is, you know, the streets, everything, and 90%, 95% of my family's there. Like I have big families on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's still there, you know. So
Okay.
it's,
Are they still in Forest Gate? I should come and look them up.
no, well,
Do they do good barbecues?
yeah, you know, they actually have more spread out. There's only a small section of them that are still in Forest Gate, but they've all gone out to Walthamstow,
Right.
Wembley, Brixton. They've all kind of spread out, you know. So
Yeah.
so you know, so when I rent a car at the airport, because you know everybody's spread out now, so you know don't want to be at the mercy of anybody, and I go and it's like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Driving in London again. You're on the other side of the street and you're doing it, you know, it's like, you know, I didn't drive when I was there, but you know, I've been back years and years,
Yeah.
you know, and everyone's always picked me up, you know, but you know, there was a point that I decided, you know what, I don't want to deal with anybody, and I'll rent my own car, and that was very entertaining.
Yeah, it's I feel like when you live where I live, the best advice I can give you is just to avoid Romford Road. I've lost so many years of my life since I've been here, just waiting in traffic in Romford Road.
I never realized the traffic was that bad. Never realized.
It's crazy. And even with it being gentrified now, I think it's got worse. The cars are just now these massive, kind of huge, I don't know, subs, SUVs.
Right.
It's just crazy. I feel like, you know, if anyone ever wanted to kill me, all they need to do is come and walk down Romford Road with a machete, and they could find me in the traffic. But yeah, anyway, I joke. So you find yourself in America. You're at college in Connecticut. super random that we bonded over at Forest Gate, and like my mod, Little Miss Disco, is from Connecticut.
Yeah.
Like this kind of strange thing. And then you find so that you got into DJing, I guess, at college, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it was funny. My mate in high school, he was going off to the Navy, and he had a pair of turntables and a mixer, and he says, Norm, you want to hold on to these because my sister, I don't want her to, mash them up, And he gave them to me, and I bought them.
And you became a turntablist.
Yeah, what I mean? And here I go, and I just start grabbing the records from my dad's and all the ones that I collected, and it kind of started like that, and it was actually a very natural thing. Like I picked it up very quickly.
What was your dad into?
Well, Dad's an old school yardie, and especially in London, the influences are so wide, and it's funny because I was just down in Florida packing up his records and stuff, and I was going through. You had Percy Sledge, you had Neil Diamond, all of the Studio One tunes.
Nice.
It was just a very wide range, and even if you think about it, a lot of the Caribbean islands are influenced by American music and British music and stuff. So the palette was very wide, and it's funny because I remember I would be at parties here, and like say for instance Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people would play Rock With You, and I was the one playing Baby Be Mine.
Baby Be Mine. No one plays Baby Be Mine.
I was like, yeah, Rock With You, but Baby Be Mine is, and I realized what my sensibilities were, like my soul sensibilities. My soul sensibilities are rooted in the UK, because hey, you two, cut it out. You should see them two down there. Just and I really, really realized where my perspective of music was coming from. Then being here, and especially in the times of hip hop, I was here in early hip hop, so I was here when, sort of the first wave, of all the artists, Treacherous 3 and Houdini and, before Rakim, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it.
And I didn't even realize what I was in. I was just loving this music, and disco and, and all of that. So, I would often not play the records that the other DJs would play. Like I'll play the records, but there would be certain ones, and they're like, and then they would always say to me, mention a British group, and they were like, "You're from London, you should know them," I'm like, but I kind of found myself in all that,
Yeah, it's interesting. I speak to a few people, and I feel like there was a massive thing in America about certain UK bands. Like they couldn't get because they were imports. I suppose you'd have 10 records or London records, or they probably didn't make it into New York. Or they probably did make it into New York, but they were kind of limited, right? And I feel like there's a mysticism around that kind of early 80s kind of vibe. Like loads of Americans love loose ends, right? I mean, they're legendary. right?
Yep.
But if you speak to American, loose ends. Carl McIntosh.
Yeah.
You know.
Also.
Right. Exactly. But it's weird because on the other side, we were kind of like shipping in all the house music, and in a way, all the kind of boogie and the Leroy Burgess and stuff. It was such a small scene. But now you get to a point where all of that stuff, but they're like 50 quid records, 70 quid records. But it hasn't kind of gone the other way, you know, like, so we exported kind of really nice street soul, which is a little, you know, but then equally it's come the other way and it's become more expensive. For me, it's, I don't know, it's just something I notice speaking to people.
Well, you know what I would say about that, and you know, New York is New York, and it's always sort of the center. They were sort of the gatekeepers of how music was necessarily heard, you know, here, and so when sort of acid house and all that stuff was coming out of Chicago, London was kind of doing the same thing. So New York kind of got left out on that side of it.
Yeah.
And then
I appreciate that.
You know, like Frankie Knuckles, he was in Chicago, and then the New York scene. So musically, we were very eclectic in New York, but commercially, there's only certain ones that got through.
Yeah.
And so at that time, music was being played on all floors, like all styles of music was being played on all floors. So you would hear hip hop on the same floor, you hear house on the same floor. Not so much reggae, because reggae really didn't play in the commercial scene until really the 90s. All the Shabbas and and all them, But it also was coming out of hip hop that was high tempo, Planet Rock, Move at Your Own Risk, and those kind of records. So there was a bridge between hip hop and house music.
Yeah.
They were all at that 118, 115 tempo. And then when it hit the 90s, the West Coast came in and the speed just dropped down to 92 beats a minute, and then soul to soul, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there was somewhat of a gatekeeping in terms of New York. And but I was listening to a like I would always ask my cousins who's playing, who's hot, what is this and what is that. And I was listening to an interview with Idris Elba, and what he said was that what he appreciates about now is that the UK has their own thing. Like it used to be almost dependent on American music before. Now UK has their own thing that can be transported there. Now, of course, like grime and the speed garage doesn't quite transfer here,
Yeah.
But some of the hip hop does, and it's still being a UK artist, whether it be R&B or hip hop or because pop always transfers, especially when you got Calvin Harris doing all these remixes, because that's the sound now. That's that sound,
It is the sound, yes.
You know what I mean? It's the sound, and to be perfectly honest, that sound has been around quite a long time, because it was down in Miami, because Miami bass music was fast, and it was kind of in that same sort of speed. That that sound, as you agree with me, that sound that was in Miami. So I would come off the plane in Miami, and then the cab driver would have the radio on, and it's that sound, and it almost sounds like freestyle. That's what it almost sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, freestyle, like that's that pitch,
Yeah.
and so you know, New York was New York, and then Miami was Miami, and then then Atlanta comes into the play, and Atlanta is in that. At that time, it was sort of like, even though we had our outcasts and etc., we always have we have the commercial group, and then we have the eclectic group. Like at that time, Outcast was the more eclectic sound.
Yeah.
You know, but you had Usher, Jermaine Dupri, all those guys. They were on the commercial side. So what happened was their style of music, with sort of like the booty bass and the you know, almost stripper music, is actually more widely accepted across the country than New York. New York is New York. So that's how Atlanta just blew up so much. So it's, you know, so all of these versions and sort of gatekeeping. The gatekeeping isn't in New York anymore. No. Unless you're really in, like, if you're in underground hip hop and you have Funkmaster Flex. So, you know, I've sort of watched the evolution of it, you know, even though it's recycled, but it's still the evolution, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, I study this. I study this so much. For me, it was kind of, you know, I'm not going to say the guy's name anymore because he's been cancelled, but there was a radio show on a place where he would, you know, he'd be at the tunnel with Funkmaster Flex, and there was Danny Ramplin as well, and there was Marcia Carr, and I feel like a pirate, and all three of them, it was like house, it was hip hop, and you know, it was all kind of very New York leaning. It's only years later I've kind of then found Theo Parrish, or you know, Kai Alsey, or Kemet. You know, for me, it's always been very New York centric, like New York hip hop, New York house, Shelter, going to Shelter and going up to see Timmy, but also walking through and seeing Sting and the other guy, which I forget, you know, but it was just
Jihad Muhammad.
Yeah. So it is really interesting, and I feel like people used to say it's really difficult to break America, but if you look now, there's loads of UK artists that have broken America in the last 5-10 years, like Georgia Smith singing on Blue Note, having a whole jazz band make a tune for her, and she says one word, and then that's her tune. It's mind blowing. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely in London there's a new soul jazz kind of R&B as well. I listen to One Extra in the car. My kids, well, actually, my kids don't lament it. They tell me to turn it up. But I feel it's important to constantly challenge yourself listening to different music, because if I just listen to house music or disco music, I mean, disco music isn't very progressive. I can collect every single disco record, but I'm not moving anything forward. And no Dr. Packen remix can tell me different. Like, but if you right now, I suppose the music that is hot is R&B and hip hop, right?
Yeah, I mean,
around the world, Afrobeats,
especially Afrobeats. You know,
so in a way, the music. I mean, I guess I know you for playing house and disco on Twitch, but obviously you also know hip hop. but Sunday Sermon is predominantly a house and disco
Yeah.
event, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the things that I do here and on Twitch and stuff, I think it's important that we don't lose sight of, even though there's all this stuff that's really big, there is all this quality music
Mm.
that people that we like to play, that
Right.
if we forget about it, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It's like Megan Thee Stallion now jumping on like what is it, Jodeci instrumentals. It's literally coming back round again, because back in the 90s it was like P Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever you want to call him,
Yeah.
like ripping up Diana Ross. And then we went through all this kind of trap and kind of how do you say, kind of the Atlanta sound. And I feel like only now we are teetering back into artists rediscovering almost like 90s loops that are based on 70s loops. And we've kind of gone full, and as long as it kind of continues, and the same with house music. House music went really boring for a while. You know, not outside of New York. New York's always had a sound, but you know, we had the soulful sound. Then it went kind of like to Europe, and then it turned into minimal. And it's only now just starting to come back around again.
Yeah.
And you know, I believe everything's cyclical, but history and the kind of stories that you can tell and everyone can tell, they're so important, because if we don't tell them, like, what is the future of music, it's not very musical.
No, I
Get off my soapbox.
I often I often have these conversations with some DJs and you know, sometimes we sound like, you know, like, oh man, get off my lawn, you know what I mean? Like, you know, but I think when you speak of house music, first of all, a lot of a lot of a lot of a lot of what's been said are kind of more on the sort of on the elder side. That the sound, the the that soulful sound didn't really evolve.
It didn't
that much. So what happened is that the younger audience that were coming up did not. They had their own version of it. So it's sort of like when sort of, again, the Calvin Harrises and the Dimitris and the David Guettas started to go with a lot of these hip hop artists, you know, and or the hip hop artists went on to them, sort of, you know. It then sort of gave that younger audience an identity of who is what, sort of thing, you know. And then all of a sudden now, you know, you have, you know, Pitbull and these kind of records to that popular audience. So in our minds, we're like, well, if we could get a Beyonce, and this is what the conversation was years ago. All we need is the top R&B artist, preferably female, to get on a house music record, and all of a sudden you'll be able to close that gap. And we talked about it for years, and many have tried, and then Beyonce comes out with this. Well, actually, Drake came out with his.
Yeah.
You know.
But then everyone got angry, right? Everyone got angry.
A lot of people got angry, and it's, you know, and it's like, really, you know, it's like people have to evolve. If this is what she thinks, you know, and you know, in say traditions of the variations of house music, you know, from soulful to deep to Afro to minimal, a lot of the popular dance music sounds, it's a more in the minimal side than it is on the soulful side.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
even shoot myself in the head. What's Beyonce's newest one? Break My Soul.
Yeah.
You know, that's that's a that's you know, that's borderline. Well, that's borderline pop
Mm-hmm.
slash. You know, it doesn't really rump. You know,
No.
even if it's kind of like like if we took Beyonce and put her over like a a uh, a Dr. Packer track
Yeah.
or Sean McCabe or you know, or one of the Chosen Few boys. You know what I mean?
Well, Toby did remix it.
Yeah, he did, and he did. You know, but that wasn't the one that caught. You know what I mean? You
No.
know, I think the uh, you know, there's so many of the remixes now. I mean, I just had Ted Smooth uh, on at Sundae Sermon. I had a hip hop stage,
Yeah.
and Ted Smooth he does a lot of remixes. So he did the Beyonce Love on Top remix.
Okay.
The honey, honey, you know, and let's go, you know, it's like one of those. And he did a Break My Soul remix, and he used Break for Love as the undercarriage of the record,
Right.
you know, done really well. It was actually it really kind of pops, you know. So that's
Ted
actually
Smooth, is it? I'm gonna
yeah,
look him up.
yeah. I'll send you the track, you know.
Okay.
Um, uh,
Johnny makes a good point. Johnny's in the chat. Beats United Radio.
Johnny, what's up, man?
He's dropping knowledge as Johnny does.
Hey,
He's like
what's up,
good
Russ?
songwriting. The lack of good songwriting these days in soulful house, right? To a point that is break my soul, because you know there are so many. Yeah, I'm not a Beyonce stan, but there are good Beyonce tunes. I remember listening to a Nicholas Jar Essential Mix years ago, and it's all kind of moody, electronic, amazingly atmospheric stuff. And then all of a sudden, out of all of this melange of white noise, comes this voice, and it's 1+1, and it's a live recording from an ITV, TV show that Beyonce did, and it's Beyonce, and like she's, I don't know, for me, it, like Break My Soul, Break My Soul. It is a pop record, like I think Johnny just said, or was it Russell? If she kind of channeled something a little bit different, like that kind of 1+1 thing, it would be a different ball story. Ball story, ball game story.
Ball game.
Ball game. But it is. It's one of those things. But anyway, I don't want to get bogged down by the future. I don't want to decide on this video how we should move Soulful House forward, because what's going to happen? I'll get blacklisted. Who's this geezer telling me what to do? No. What I am really interested in, and we kind of digressed a little bit, and I'm going to run out of time because the missus is going to be like, "It's dinner now. What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm on Twitch." Dead. But what the WBLS thing, right? So let's just get back to.
Yeah.
I want to get back to kind of you starting as a DJ. I'm guessing you're doing hip hop,
Right.
and then you kind of move to house, and then you end up on WBLS, right?
Well, well, sort of again at that time, all styles of music was being played on the same floor. So I actually and how I actually really got into house was one of my college mates. He was actually from Brooklyn, and well, the school I went to, it was really almost a commuter school. Like a lot of the kids that went to school were from the New York area, so Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Long Island, and two of them were club kids. They were at the Palladium, they were at Wild Pitch, Danceteria, like when they were 15.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this question because I'm really into clubs, and I'd be really interested to know, where you went at that time. But I feel like you just answered some of it.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they on the weekends. Now I was a runner, so I was there on scholarship, and so we would have to sneak out, and when they would pick me up wherever we were, on the other side of campus or something, they would be all dressed up in the polka dot shirts, black pants with the Batman painting on their shoes, and and I was like, what's this? You know what I mean? And they were city kids, and so they were the ones that took me to these clubs, to the Palladium, to the Nails, to the to Wild Pitch, to all these underground spots, and the Tunnel. Yeah, and so that's where I really got my chops in there, and I would stand in there, and while I'm there, they would be there, and then their friends who they went to school with, they would be in dance circles and doing amazing stuff, and I'm just like, oh, this is nuts, So this is after breaking. This is after breaking, pop locking. This is freestyle dancing now, and so that's where I was always asked. And one of the friends, his name was Jay. What's that record? And what's that record? And what's that record? Like after a while, I just started bringing a pen with me, like whenever I went out with him, because he would know them all. And then he and his friends are doing backflips, in the club and stuff like that. And then on the weekends, I would go to the record shop down in Manhattan and go and buy all these records.
And what record shops did you go to?
So at the time, we had
dance tracks.
Dance tracks. Then we had
Vinyl Mania.
Rebel, Vinyl Mania, Umbilica. I forgot what the name is again. But Vinyl Mania and Dance Tracks were the two that most of the house music DJs went to, because I would get them from there. All the hip hop stuff, I would go to this place called Rock and Soul.
Yeah, I've been to Rock and Soul.
Yeah, so Rock and Soul was sort of the hip hop place, and the other two were the. So I would always go over there for the imports, Dope Jams. Dope Jams was a little later.
Williamsburg, I think. It was Williamsburg.
Yeah. But Vinyl Mania and Dance Tracks were the two. So
is it A1 on Bleecker?
8-ball. Yeah. No. Well, funny you say that. There's 8-ball records, right? And
A1.
And A1 is on 6th Street.
Right.
6th Street in the East Village. So A1 was more of a collector's spot where you could get like gems, But that's where I mortgaged the house, at those shops. But that's where I got my chops in, and I would just be in the record store all day, and there's a guy playing the records, playing people's records, and sometimes I would just sit in the couch and just wait for him to play something that, and then, or it would be he'll put something on, and then somebody say, "Oh, let me get that," and somebody else said, "Let me get that," and then let me get that. And I'm like, "Hey, let me get that."
Old school.
You know, that's the thing I do miss about record shops. You know,
Yeah.
about just,
The whole discovery, and you know, I hear stories about Joaquin being at dance tracks, and it'd be like Friday night, and then they'd all be down there, and Joe would just put a record on the turntable, and literally they just sell it
sell
straight,
out.
sell it out.
Right.
You know, it's just a different vibe now, right? We all sit at home on Traxsource or you're chosen. And you're like, that sounds all right. I'll play that for a couple of weeks. It's a different vibe.
But I have to tell you my quick Timmy Reddishford story. I got onto WBLS, and I tell you how I got there. First of all, I'm DJing, and I'm actually DJing in New York at the time. Someone heard me play during college, and they booked me, and then all of a sudden I'm doing a Friday night like every night, you know. But I'm really only playing I'm really only playing hip hop and R&B and reggae, and then, you know, throw the house music closer to the end of the night sort of situation. And so in Stanford, where my parents were, my mom says, "Norm, I go to this happy hour on Fridays, you know, after work, and they have DJs in there. They're not very good. You should go." So I go down to Stanford, and literally their ride from Manhattan to Stanford is about 40 minutes in a car, right? It's easy, quick, right? So I go into the spot, talk to the guy, said, "Hey, listen, you know, I'm a DJ, blah, blah, blah," you know, and he says, "All right, I'm going to give you a shot." So I think it was a Friday night, and I got on at 10, and he said, "Play for an hour." So play for the hour, knocked it out. So the DJ is behind me the whole time, right? And I'm fucking killing it, wrecking it, you know? And then so 11 o'clock comes, and I'm like, you ready to come on? He's like, "I can't follow that." He said, "I can't follow that." I was like, "Okay." So I keep DJing, and then I ended up winning the gig, you know? So he put me on Saturday. So the owner said to me, "You DJ in New York?" Like, and I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I want to get a radio station to broadcast there." And I was like, "All right." And so it's sort of like the idea that you live in London, I'm in America, or the adage that, "Yo, do you know the Jacksons?" because you're in Forest Gate. You know, it's sort of like that kind of, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like, have you ever been to Die Hard, drum and bass club? Because I'm from Leicester. No, I don't listen to drum and bass, but I go anywhere in Europe. It's like Die Hard was a great drum and bass club. I've never been there, mate. Sorry. Do you want to talk about Leicester City? I can talk about Leicester City. Die Hard, though. No, I can't.
You know? And so all I did was I just made a phone call to the radio station myself. I said, "Hey, they want to do a live broadcast here. And would you, how do you go about it?" So I give him the number. Before you know it, a couple weeks later, here we go. Here he is. Live broadcast is happening. So they bring in their own DJs. They do 2 hours live on the radio. And I would open, but I wouldn't open live. I would just open the house, basically.
Yeah.
And so this happened for about a good 6 months, year. And then one day, the program director was like, "Oh, you're pretty good, man. You want to slot on BLS?" And I was like, "Okay." Like, you know, like, well, I can say no. And that's how it happened. And so it's like that weekly thing. And then And then, that's kind of how the BLS thing started for me. And doing shows, like they had us doing shows. So they were bringing all the DJs and stuff. And here's my Grandmaster Flash story. My first day that I'm doing my own show on BLS, Grandmaster Flash comes into the room, and I'm putting on my needles, get my records ready. I'm feeling good, boom, boom, boom. So Flash is, so Flash, when we would do the club parties, Flash would always, like, I actually just played the reggae, so everybody had their segment. So I would just play all the 90s reggae. And Flash would always ask, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And so he's in there with me, and he's talking to me, yeah, man, And so the guy, the air personality goes, he goes, 30 seconds, right? And so Flash, he goes to me, all right, it's counting down, got a record ready. And Flash goes, you got 10 million people listening to you, man. Blow it up. He walks out the door. And so my hands started shaking. I was like, don't, keep it out your head, keep it out your head, keep it out your head. I was
mate, that's genius.
I was like, oh, you fucking kidding me, man.
So what year was this?
This was 94.
So were you playing on WBLS the same time as John Robinson?
Yes, I was.
I love John Robinson.
And actually, it was funny because out of all the DJs that was on the station, I was the only one that played any kind of house music.
Yeah.
So I would come in to the station at 4 to 12 o'clock mix and just go and just, I'm over there like
midday mix, right?
Over there like, it's fucking John Robinson. Oh my God, I got all these records.
Oh mate,
and
I love John Robinson.
And he invited me into, like I told him, I want to produce records, and he says, listen, come to the studio anytime. And I was like, wow. And then about a month later, that's when he got in the accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad.
I was like, oh my God, But fast forward to the Timmy Regisford story. So
I thought you were going to say the guy behind you was Timmy Regisford. I was like, I can't follow you. Can't follow you, mate.
I'm going to get to my Timmy Regisford. So there's BLS and there was KISS. And BLS and KISS were the same audience, R&B, contemporary, classics, etc. Right? And so what happened? There's a company called Emis, and Emis is a big broadcasting company. They bought KISS, and they bought another station, which was, I think it was like a pop station, and they turned it into 97.1, where Funkmaster Flex is.
Yeah, Hot 97.
So KISS, so BLS had to make the decision which way they were gonna go, because 97 was gonna be hip hop, and then we have classics at KISS, and BLS was R&B contemporary. So what happened was KISS, BLS decided to go to the old classic way. So all the hip hop DJs got fired, etc., etc. There was this guy named Frankie Crocker. He was legendary at BLS years prior, and he's come back. So they were trying to sort of revive this thing again. And so I'm, I want to keep my job. I can play disco, I can play classics, I can play that stuff, right? And so I set up a meeting with Frankie. Frankie, he opens the door in, sitting Timmy Regisford next to him, right? And so he goes, so what you want to do, Norman? And I was like, listen, I've made this little 5-minute mix. I'm going to show you what I can do and where we can, where we could keep jocks, because all the DJs got fired. John Robinson, I think, was still under contract for a little while, but Flash was the only one that was left. And so I planned this mix. It went from like R&B contemporary, James Brown, loose ends. I just kind of did a nice little, thing, So finished, and he goes, pretty good, pretty good. And I said, so what slots do you have open? And he said, so I asked him about a slot here. He was like, no. Like, how about that slot? I was like, no. And then I said, how about that slot? And then Timmy said, that's my slot. Now I knew Timmy from records and playing at the garage, but I was like, oh, man. And so I ended up not getting back in after the time, right? So one day I'm at Dance Tracks, and you have your turntables where you play your own records and you're listening, So I have my head down, and someone has the other turntable. Now I didn't look up to see who it was, and for some reason I couldn't figure out. There was something where I couldn't hear in the headphones, and kind of this guy kind of encroached into my space while I was sort of like, So what I did is I stepped on his foot, like, and I didn't look at him. I didn't look. And then he reached over and he flicked a button that came into my ear. And I look up, who is it? Timmy Register. And he was like, "You were in the fucking office, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I was, yeah."
You should have said, "That's my slot."
I should have said that, right? Oh boy, I tell you.
So we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, and we have not at all spoken about Sundae Sermon.
Okay.
It would be remiss of me to wind this up without first talking about Sundae Sermon, because we've done a WBS, we've done history of Stormin Norman, but right. So Sundae Sermon, to the uninitiated, it's like it's a block party, right? It's in a park.
Well, it's actually it's usually in the park. It's usually a big park, and one stage, and it's basically disco house, played like funk and soul, but it kind of end more on the house music side. And basically here in Harlem, when I moved to Harlem I moved into Harlem '94, like around BLS time, and all of the cool parties that I would go to, I would see my friends sort of like mind in terms of music and culture would always take me to places in Brooklyn, or the spot that was on the water where Jelly Bean Benitez was playing, and we didn't have that kind of culture in Harlem. Harlem was more sort of hip hop, or it was jazz. You know what I mean? Like the legendary kind of situations. And I was like, there's nothing in the middle. There's nothing that's a little more eclectic, etc., etc. And I was like, well, I see this party. There was a party called Soul Summit that happens in Brooklyn. There's a few other parties. And so I was like, you know what? Why can't I do this in Harlem? So, and I said, I invited a bunch of my friends, and now at this age, we will have children and things like that. And I was like, well, maybe I could put it on a Sunday. So, people can bring their kids, and play the music and just have a really cool time and reminisce of, the 80s and 90s and, good shit, you know what I mean? And I promoted it for about a month, and 50 people showed up, and half of them were our kids. So, you know, and it sort of built very organically. Very organically. It was sort of, you know, people just heard about it. And the part that we had it in was, it was sort of, you had to know that it was happening. You couldn't just walk by a park and see it. You wouldn't see it. But you could hear like a boom, 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 but you didn't know, you know, where it was coming from. And then it's sort of like, as the years have gone on, it's just grown and grown, you know, from 50 to, you know, like sometimes our biggest dates had been like 10,000 people, you know, and sort of the sort of the essence of it, it almost felt like a very family reunion feeling. Like people would come at like 10 in the morning while the sound is getting set up and the stage and all that stuff. And they would come and put their blanket down in certain part, and they will leave and come back at 2 o'clock, and nobody's moved their blanket, and the blankets are wall to wall.
Mad.
Like I remember when I used to be able to walk between the blankets. Now you're stepping on blankets as you're coming down. Yeah. Huge part.
The blankets, though. People put blankets down.
Put blankets down. Yeah.
It's like towels on beach beds in Ibiza.
Yeah. You know, people started out with like bringing like a little picnic basket with like some wine and cheese. Then years later, it's champagne and fucking, you know, personal drinks and 6-packs and, you know, full out food spreads, you know, with cutlery and napkins and, you know, it just became a thing. And people would, you know, put their holiday around Sundae Sermon. I actually started out with 5 dates in the summertime. And by the time we got 4 years in, it was just too much to do it that frequently. It just is really an undertaking. And then I also had like issues with the city and stuff, you know, because, you know, when you know, when they see thousands of people as such, you know, they want their cut, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, you know.
So I'm guessing you didn't do it in the last 2 years because of COVID.
Yeah.
So no, you did do it last year, right? Did you do it last year?
No, the year before.
Right.
No, hold on. Was it last year? No, I didn't do it last year. Hold on.
No, you did. I'm pretty sure you had.
I did it in Queens.
Right. Yes, I remember because TT went, and she was giving me like live updates.
Yeah. That was last year.
So this year is the first time back in the park, right?
Well, I actually didn't even do it in the park. I did it as a block party.
My research, I'm going to sack my research guy. He's not done it properly.
And I did it as a block party. 2 things happened. So everybody who applied in 2019 for 2019 for 2020, they got first dibs on the dates. Right. Now, I ended up being collaborating with this thing called Harlem Week here. It's like basically 3 months of celebrating Harlem with all types of shows and etc. And they would put Sundae sermons insurance under their permit. So I would have the park. So that particular day, there was nothing else but Sundae Sermon.
Right.
So when COVID hit, they cut their programming, so it cut Sundae Sermon out. Hence, that's how I ended up in Queens where TT was.
Okay.
And so I applied again. So because I was away for so long, I didn't apply because I actually wasn't going to do it. I actually said, you know what, I just need another one off.
Yeah.
And so I applied late and I didn't get it. But a block party was always something I wanted to do because I wanted to have two stages.
Yeah.
One at one end of the avenue and one at the other end, and hip hop and R&B. So it's all really reflective of just what I would want if I went to a music festival. I want some choices, you know what I mean? And that's really all it was. It was like, I want, I love hip hop and R&B and reggae, you know, Jamaican background. I want to hear some tunes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what? We can do a house music stage with disco, and it could be whatever, and then have the hip hop and R&B, and it turned out really well. We had a few thousand people out there. I mean, the avenues.
And Lady Alma.
Lady Alma.
Wow. Misbehavior. Misbehavior was on the hip hop stage, right?
Yeah. You know Trish, do you?
I don't know her personally, but she has played on Saturday Night Experience. It took a while. We had to go through a number of different people to try and get to her. But yeah, I've been in it. I saw her on your Sundae Sermon actually.
Yeah.
I don't go out very much in London. I'm not allowed. My missus locks the door, and I just have to look after the children. That's why it's a perfect that I can now stream online. And she's still not happy. Anyway. But no, it's all good. It's all good. Well, I'm hoping that now, apart from the pound massively devaluing this week, I'm kind of hoping that at some point I will be able to come to New York, and maybe I can come and just experience the Sundae Sermon. That would be lovely.
Most definitely.
Because the Sundae sermons that I get here are mainly through a preacher who's a very good preacher. Doesn't have any
church, a different kind of church.
It is a different type. It's important. Churches are important from a well-being and education perspective, not the collection plate.
Right. Well, you know what? When we were having it in the park, we have we get funding from the city and some sponsors and stuff like that. But we also have these buckets that say Sundae Sermon on it. And we have volunteers that go around, and because it's a free outdoor event, so you have to figure some way to pay for it. And people are always very good about that. I mean, they stuff the bucket, and we're able to pay for some things,
Yeah, no, it's a dream to be able to put on something and not lose loads and loads of money.
Yeah.
Especially when you do something selfish, like just organise your own festival and then put the tunes that you want to hear on, and not Calvin Harris. I get
Harris.
I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah. So
cool. Well, thank you. I am going to have to wind this up a little bit because I am in prime family time. Are we going to see you back on Twitch?
Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, we.
Probably in the winter when it gets cold, right? Probably in the winter when it gets cold, right?
It's been in my bones, so it's gonna push me along. And interestingly enough, the plan was to stream on Sunday, and everyone who came here to pick up my stuff forgot the streaming stuff, and I didn't notice because I was running around. I happened to be running around a lot more than I usually do, and totally forgot. And when I got home after, you know, that night, I was like, oh shit, streaming bag is still here.
No,
So,
I get it. Well, you know, you're always welcome. Just ping me a message. We'll put you
yes,
on a raid.
sir. I appreciate
and what are the plans? What are the plans for the next year? I hear you're doing Miami.
Yes. So there's I'm doing Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Yeah. So there's a festival called Jamaica Frenzy. It's put on by Little Ray, DJ Little Ray.
Yeah,
He does
Little Ray.
a party in Brooklyn called the Jamboree, and he does it once a year. And it's a pretty, you know, heavy house music, you know, scene. And this is maybe it's like his third or fourth year that he's doing it. And he invited me to be on the lineup. So
nice.
So that's October 25th through the 29th, Jamaica Frenzy.
I can thoroughly recommend Little Ray's house music session on a Saturday night that goes into Sunday morning. Shots every half an hour. Amazing music, but he gets leery. Oh my god, I'm just there eating my breakfast.
He was supposed to play on Sunday too, and he texts me around 8 in the morning. It's like, Norm, I just finished playing, man. I can't come. I was like, all right, it's all right. You know, we got Obvious play. The Obvious, I've never heard Obvious play before, and he was actually really good, really good.
Yeah. I raided him once, and he was playing. We raided his channel. It was in Tulum, and he was literally. It was the most random thing ever. Had about 40 people. Passed it over to Obvious. Obvious is in front of all these scantily clad women, playing like proper Afro Obvious type music.
Right.
Well, hi, how you doing? Well, this has took a bit of a turn. But no, Obvious is dope. Obvious is dope.
Yeah.
But no, all good. Well, thank you, Norm. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, man. I appreciate you being able to survive. And yeah, each one teach one. There's somebody wiser than me said that I do find that just, you know, having these conversations, you kind of eke out a little bit of something that we can take home, even if it is I don't know, Beyonce being the savior of house music. Maybe not. Don't say that to anybody. You'll get cancelled. But yeah, groovy. All right. Well, if you I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the next couple of weeks back online.
Get your requested.
Organising some shenanigans in your chat with TT.
Yes.
And yeah, obviously, guys, if you're not following Sundae Sermon, you should follow Sundae Sermon. He's been away for a little while, but if it's dope disco, it's dope house music, and it's just a nice vibe.
Yes.
And there are so many, you know, I try and surround myself with people with nice vibes. Norman here is a man. You can tell. Even at the beginning of this interview, when I'm just like hearing voices, he's just like, Rob's just being Rob. What do we do with him? What do we do?
Take your medication.
Yeah, exactly.
All
right, guys.
Philip the Haitian, Philippe the Haitian.
Yeah, shout out to everyone who's been listening. Philippe has just walked in, or he's just been lurking. But we'll be back. I'll be back next month with somebody else. I've got some calls out to people. I'll probably send them this video and say it won't be like this because I'll have organised the sound properly. But you know, absolutely be like Norman because Norman's a legend. And yeah, I feel like I'm on a Brazilian house raid tomorrow. I've had no notification apart from a message yesterday at midnight. But if there's a flyer in the next 2 hours, you might see me on tomorrow, and Norm on Sunday. So yeah, blessings, people. Until next time, stay safe, take care of yourself, and be nice to people because there's lots of people that aren't doing that. So be the person you want to be.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right.
Take it easy. Until next time.